My question's to the Prime Minister. Petrol prices have gone up by as much as $900 for a typical family driving a standard car in a year, while real wages have fallen $700. On top of this, median rents in Windsor in my electorate have increased by almost $3,000 a year. Hasn't it become harder and harder for working families to make ends meet under this decade-old government?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Our government has taken numerous initiatives to take the pressure off on cost of living, and as the data reveals very clearly, Mr Speaker, particularly when it comes to petrol prices. When it comes to petrol prices, in the last 3 years alone, Mr Speaker, what we've seen is a 1.2% increase on average per year, and that compares to a 2.6% increase that occurred under the Labor years, Mr Speaker. Reference was also made to housing costs, which I know is a great challenge, particularly for younger people, and younger people who particularly want to buy into their first home. And, Mr Speaker, since we came to government, housing costs have increased, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, on an average of 1.7% each year. And in the last 3 years, they've increased by 0.6%. Now, that compares, Mr Speaker, under the Labor years to 5.1%, Mr Speaker, to 5.1%. And I know, Mr Speaker, the Minister for Housing will be able to tell you this. At the last election, I said we were going to take action to help people get into their first home. And, Mr Speaker, under the policies we've introduced since the last election, 320,000 Australians we have helped into home ownership, Mr Speaker. That's what we took to the election.
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. The member for Macquarie on a point of order.
Point of order, Speaker. Relevance. My question was about rentals, not purchasing.
Yes, but the question was also about making it harder for working families to make ends meet. The Prime Minister has the call.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Speaker. And you know who's been buying those houses, Mr Speaker? People who are renting, Mr Speaker. People who are renting, and we have given them the opportunity through the First Home Loan Deposit Scheme and, Mr Speaker, the Family Home Ownership Scheme, a scheme that is helping single mums buy their first home, Mr Speaker. That is what our policies are doing. It's giving Australians who have that aspiration to go and buy a home the opportunity to go and achieve that. And since we were elected 3 years ago, Mr Speaker, 320,000 Australians have been helped into home ownership. That's what I call promise delivered, Mr Speaker. Commitment given, promise delivered. And this government will continue to do that, because under the sound economic management which is being delivered by this government, that has seen Australia through one of the greatest economic challenges since the Great Depression, Mr Speaker, that has seen Australia coming through this pandemic and the economic recovery underway, Mr Speaker, Australians can have confidence in their future. They can plan for their future with confidence. They can plan to buy their first home. They can plan to get skilled and get a job, Mr Speaker. They can plan to open and run a small business. They can plan to go and invest in new equipment that sees them get an advantage and be able to sell their products at a better price and be able to grow their business. They can do that in regional Australia, Mr Speaker, in manufacturing and recycling and in the services industry. They'll be able to do it as we're getting the students back now, Mr Speaker, in December. That is a plan that is securing our economic recovery. Those opposite, Mr Speaker, have no such plans and no such experience and no such credibility.
Order.
You can't trust Labor with your money.
Expired.